This week on the show is a conversation with artist and creative mentor Summer Thyme. I met Summer last year at a clothing swap where I pulled out a t-shirt that had an image of one of her paintings on it, and the image spoke to my soul. So of course, after we got talking, I felt pulled to learn so much more about her, especially when she told me about this challenge that she was in the middle of, which was 365 days of art. So of course, we talk about this, but we also talk about how Summer believes that we can perceive everything we do with a sacred lens, and that is the exact perspective in which she goes about her artwork. And as a result, her creative process has become this mentorship with her own darkness, her own light, her human, as well as her infinite, powerful, highest self. Highlights from this episode: Summer's background in organizing events for creative expression, particularly a multi-artist live show called Emerge. How Summer met her sacred creative practice during a time of trauma, anxiety, and insomnia. Details into what she learned from doing 365 days of art. Summer's journey through creative insecurity, and details behind her latest painting series of female archetypes, an exploration of various identities within herself. For example, the maiden, the lover, the warrior, and more. If you would like to work with Summer, you will find all her information in the show notes. If you'd like to work with me, you can find that information in the show notes as well. One last announcement. I have an idea to do an episode in a completely new format here. A while back, I asked on Instagram about episode topics, which you would like to hear from me, and somebody mentioned spiritual bypassing. And I found that to be a very interesting topic. And, it's a topic that I think of, that I've experienced, but I haven't really done a deep dive in terms of asking and speaking with others about it. So I would like you to join me on this podcast. I'm going to post about it today, Monday, podcast day, on my Instagram story to give you an opportunity to leave me a text message on your experience with spiritual bypassing. If you would like to remain anonymous, please let me know. If you want your name featured in the show, more than happy to do that, plugging in your Instagram handle. And if you'd like to leave me an audio message, you can do that actually through the podcast. So you can scroll up to the show notes at the very bottom. You're going to see a link that will bring you to a page through Anchor, through my podcast platform, where you can leave me an audio message. And I will be collecting this data until the last week of July. So until about, let's say, July 22nd, 2023. Again, what I would love to hear from you is what your definition of spiritual bypassing is, what your experience with it is, whether it's, someone bringing that expression towards you or you doing it for someone else. And remember, we're not here to judge. We're not here to put anyone down or have a dramatic story here. I really want to know about the lessons that you've learned so that we can have this opportunity to learn from each other. And it seems so fun to have you on the podcast with me. So please, if you feel the inkling of a call to share your lessons, your message on spiritual bypassing, you can find my Instagram in the show notes, and you can also find the link to record a voice message as well. You are listening to the School of Whispers podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, and this is my space to get real, open, and weird about my life experiences as a psychic, medium, energy healer, and student of Chinese medicine. On the show, I'll be sharing my healing journey and the concepts I've learned along the way, and I'll be having guests on talking about the same sort of thing. I am so happy you're here, and I hope this show leaves you feeling inspired and empowered to learn how to listen to the whispers of your own body and spirit. Let's get into the show. Welcome, everyone, back to the School of Whispers podcast. You've got me, your host, here, and today we have our wonderful guest, Summer.
Hello.
Welcome, Summer. So happy that we're finally, it's been a while of us talking about this. I'm really glad we're finally doing it.
Yeah, same.
And we've got some big plans for this podcast, but how I'm feeling, I would like to start is giving you the floor to introduce yourself to the listener and giving everyone a sort of basis of knowing, who are they listening to here?
Hi there. So my name is Summer. I go by Thyme as my artist name, and I'm an artist. And I also create content for YouTube. But primarily, I create art that really brings in the spirit, and I use art as a tool for healing, and I empower others to do the same. So that's kind of like a brief summary of who I am and what I do.
It is very brief because I know that there's so much more. I think when we met, you were at a point where you were dedicating yourself even more, I think, to your art practice, but you're also a community and event organizer, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct, yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that side of you as well?
Sure. So I have really had a heart for doing live events since I was in high school. It kind of started with me taking over the school talent show, and who everybody said that we've tried that in the past and it never worked, and I was like, no, I'm going to do it. So I did it, and it was like a huge success, and everyone had a ton of fun, and since then I've really just loved organizing events and bringing people together, and realized that I really had a knack for that. In more recent times, I've kind of taken that love for organizing, and I put it into immersive art experiences. I did a 3-day immersive art show called Emerge, which we sold out, and it was just this really beautiful journey where I took everyone through a meditative experience from the journey of the outside world, and then going into the womb and really having this rebirth and having all of this come to life through dance, through art installations, music, and it was just really like a dream come true kind of event that I had the honor of putting on. And since then, have done creative healing workshops and ecstatic dances in the community, and really just helping other people engage with the power of creativity and how it can influence their own lives and their own well-being.
That's very much a soul calling for you, isn't it? Were you always aware of what was driving you in organizing these events, or is it kind of more of now that you've taken a step back, is it kind of a hindsight of realizing?
Can you ask that again?
Yeah. So you're with your soul's purpose of one. I always believe our sole purpose, before we can do it for others, it has to be for us, and it's accessing that creative juice, that mojo, and I want to give you more time and space to talk about what creativity really means for you and connection, but it seems that you were doing it a lot for others, and I wonder if, as you were organizing these events, were you conscious of, I'm doing all of this because this is what my soul was here to do? And anytime you were shaken in your foundation of, this is hard, am I really going to do this? Did you have that purpose that was driving you? Or is it now that you've taken a step back from organizing these events that you're more aware of what you're really here to do now that you're kind of in a place of stillness?
Yeah, I think when I started organizing events, for example, when I was in high school and I started organizing, it was really just like having fun. I was like, this is fun. Like, I enjoy this. I enjoy the process of bringing other people into something creative. So it was really just a love for it that really drove me in the beginning. I don't think that I really felt like that was my purpose. After that, I went to school for psychology, and I was kind of in this place of, I don't really know exactly what I want to do with my life. And then anytime that I had the opportunity to lead someone else in a creative experience, it just felt really soul-fulfilling. And so I think I just kept following that. I tutored a 13-year-old kid in art and his dad really just knew that he was a talented artist, but he didn't see the talent in himself, and he wanted someone who could be there with him to help him increase his art skill, but also just realize, like, gain confidence in his creativity. And so after working with him for a summer, I just, like, I loved that. And I loved that at the end of that I could see a growth in his confidence and in his love for creativity. And so that was really beautiful for me. And I took a break after that from teaching and all of that. And once I got the idea to do the immersive art experience, it's actually kind of funny. I was like really trying to push it off, but I knew it was something that I wanted to do. And so I approached one of my friends about it, and he had a space that I was kind of like keen on using for the event. And I asked him if he would be open to that, and he was like, "Oh, sure. Like, when are you thinking?" I was like, "Oh, probably like a couple years down the road, like so I can really like take my time and organize it." And he was like, "No, you're gonna do it in 6 months." And I was just like, "Oh my God." I was like, "Okay, I gotta like start now then." But he really pushed me, and he really believed in me, and having done that and had it be such like a success, just in terms of like people showing up and the feedback that I got from everyone, I think that's when I really started to realize that this is my sole purpose, and this is something that I came here to do. And so that's the point at which I really got it.
I love that message that if it doesn't have to necessarily be this big, deep connection. It can start as fun, and follow that fun, because it will guide you to what are you actually here to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a message that I've gotten a lot throughout my healing journey, is that healing can be fun. And I think it's something that we so often think of as like this work that we have to do begrudgingly, and it's going to be so hard and it's going to be so painful. But it doesn't have to be. And like certainly like in your healing journey, you're of course going to come upon times that are hard, but you don't have to make it that, and it can be fun, and there are ways to like approach it in that way. And that's one of the things that I love about creativity, is that it does make healing fun. It's so fun to create.
Yeah, God, that takes me right back to the conversation we had while we were eating lunch, of me realizing I'm so afraid of this next step of healing, because my expectation is that it's going to be fucking hard and scary and gonna bust, just knock me on my ass. And so it's so funny when I do these interviews, how much messages come through my person I'm having a conversation for. That's really for me. And I just love, I recently went to a women's circle, and it was just 5 women, and we did a game. We did sacred play. So in one basket, you ask a question, and then on the other basket, you tune in and you write an answer down for someone in the group who might need it. And I got my own question, which was, "Why are you so afraid?" And the answer was, "Have more time to play." And I was like, what a remedy for fear. Play and creativity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on that note, I want to dive more into the meat and potatoes of this conversation and talking about what art and creativity really means for you, as you have this really beautiful spirituality to you. And I loved hearing some of your awakening. Anytime that you tell me a story that's either about your awakening or even the mushroom story that you just told me earlier, I love the way that you paint the picture. I love all the serendipitous moments, and you got a really strong connection. So I would love for you to share with everyone the spirituality behind your creation and more about that purpose here.
Sure. Yeah. So I think my journey with creativity and the spirituality that I found through it really started when I was in college, and I was going through some really, really difficult times in my life. And I mean, just like really deep traumas happening in the moment with my roommates, and and with men and just the people in my life. And at the time that all of these things were going on, I had signed up for a acting for non-majors class in college.
What is that?
So it's just an acting class, but it was like for an acting class for people who are not majoring in theater. Yeah. So it was just kind of something that I signed up for fun because I had some extra credits. And what I didn't realize is that the instructor who was leading this had set this class up in a way where it was actually drama therapy. And we were kind of her guinea pigs. So I had no idea going into it that it was going to be such a deep experience to take this class. And I also had no idea when I signed up for this class that I was going to be going through some of the hardest times of my life. And such a beautiful serendipitous thing, though, because I was going through all of this trauma, and at the same time, I had this space where I was given complete permission to express myself. And I was given complete permission to feel the feelings, not just like feel the feelings a little bit, but to feel the feelings as big as I can, and to really show it to the other people in the class or to the audience, like, what am I feeling right now? What am I trying to portray? What's going on? And to have that outlet was completely life-changing. And it completely altered the way that I was able to move through that trauma. Like, I have no idea what my life would be like if I didn't take that class. But I do know that it allowed me to have a little bit of more freedom, and it showed me how to work through traumatic experiences. And it showed me that if I have a space where I can express myself without judgment, then it's going to be a lot easier to get through it, and I don't have to hold that in my body. You know, so much has happened since then, but I've really held on to that message that I received there. And during that time, I also started painting really heavily. I couldn't sleep at night. I mean, like, to the point where I was so anxious that I would lay flat on the floor and just stare out the window, so paranoid that someone was going to break into my house and try and hurt me, like really intense anxiety. And so I would stay up and I would paint. And it would be 5 o'clock in the morning and I had to go to work and I hadn't slept at all. But having painted for hours, I felt so much lighter. And so, again, I just kept following this of, I need to put this somewhere, whether it's acting, whether it's writing, whether it's painting. I need to tell this story for my own sake. And so that's really where the spirituality came into my creative practice and has been guiding me since then, is just knowing that whenever life gets tough and whenever there's something that hurts inside of me, creativity is always going to be there to show me through.
And I think with art, it's one of those few things where the growth is really tangible because you can literally look back. Do you still have those paintings from college?
My parents have my insomniatic sleepless night painting, and it is weird. And I'll see if they can send me a photo and I'll show it to you. Yeah, it's very just kind of bizarre and strange. And I'm trying to think if I have some other ones. I think a lot of them I ended up painting over and kind of transforming over time, so I don't really have the original pieces. Yeah.
That's really cool though too. Just continuing the transformation.
Yeah.
So at that point, had you gone through, because I feel like we go through many spiritual awakenings, but had you had gone through your big one that kind of connected you more to what God, source means to you in your life?
That was the start of it. Yeah. So the trauma that I went through with my roommate, I can go into that a little bit.
If you're comfortable.
Yeah, so I lived in a house with two other ladies, and I got home really late one night, and I remember I was out. I had went to like a friend's concert. He had a band, and It was only like 10 o'clock, maybe 11 o'clock, and I remember I started to feel really anxious, and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I have to go home. And so I listened to that. I went home. I got ready for bed, whatever, was laying down and kind of half asleep, and I heard a scream. And I ran out of my room, and I ran into one of my roommates' room, and I like pushed the door open, and she was just laying there in bed. She was like, what's going on? And I was like, I heard a scream. Did you hear it? And she was like, no. She just kind of thought I was crazy. She was like, it's probably just like cats outside or something. And I was like, okay, no, I swear I heard a loud scream. And I went back into my room, and then I heard it again, and I heard a man's voice. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was like, I can't believe you. Like, how could you do that? And it was coming from my other roommate's room, and I didn't think that she was home. So I went into her room, and I slammed the door open, and I see him standing over her, and she's got bruises on her face, and she's got choke marks around her neck, and he's towering over her, and she's like going unconscious. In this moment now, I look back and I'm like, I have no idea how I wasn't scared in that moment, but I was not. I felt this incredible power of spirit come over me that was like, you got to get him out of the house. And so I told him, you need to get out of the house right now. And he's like, no, I'm just talking to her. I was like, no, the hell you're not. You need to get out of this house right now, or I'm calling the police. And he ran out of the house, and I took her into my room, and I sat with her, and I remember just kind of like putting my hands on her and kind of giving her some loving energy and like letting her know it's gonna be okay. And she was kind of drifting in and out of consciousness. I took her to the hospital, and I remember being there at the hospital with her and just feeling everyone. I started feeling every single patient that was sitting in that waiting room. I started feeling like there was a woman who was outside and she was crying, and I just felt her so intensely, and I ended up talking to her a little bit, and like her husband was having a heart attack, and it was just so intense. Like I had at this point in my life not had such an empathic experience where I was feeling the energies of everyone around me. And so it was really that trauma of witnessing that and being like the firsthand responder to that situation that it felt like it cracked the surface, like almost like I had a porcelain cast around me that was kind of protecting me, and it shattered that completely. And I was just this completely mushy, open being who was feeling absolutely everyone and everything. And so that was really kind of what pushed me into this spiritual journey and really made me start to look for ways to heal my nervous system, and made me start to go down this healing path of feeling all of this intensity and not knowing how to move through it. And so I started to search for the things that were helping me, and creativity was one of the big ones in that.
Whoa. So this is the second time you've told me that you've had that strong empathic experience of feeling everyone's everything. Do you still feel that from time to time, or have you kind of gotten a handle on that? And if you have gotten a handle, what are some of your tools? Because I can only imagine if someone's drawn to this podcast here, they have a lot of empathic qualities to them, and not all of us have a handle on it. That was actually a huge piece of my journey, was figuring out, okay, you feel a lot, and you got to kind of reel it in to operate like a normal person every day.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely still struggle with this. I absolutely still feel everyone's feelings. But I do have more control over it, and I think that it's just something that I've like been able to attune over time, practicing being in my own energy, creating my own energy bubble, and also just realizing that it's not helpful a lot of the time for me to feel other people's feelings. They need to do that, and it's more helpful if I can help them empower themselves to feel what they're feeling. And so, yeah, I think now when I encounter that realization that I'm taking on other people's suffering is really just taking a step back and coming into my own energy, taking a deep breath, really tuning into my own body, and realizing that it's great that I can know where they're at and that I can feel where they're at, because I can really like connect with them on that and have a deep, meaningful experience with them in that. But I don't need to take it on myself. And so it's really like being able to use the gift of the empathy without letting it kind of burn me. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't still from time to time, or like I'm not perfect. I don't have that completely dialed in, but I've certainly learned a lot over time about how to use that gift. Yeah.
And so at what point in your artwork did it become, because something that you mentioned earlier was how art is a deep connection with source. So at what point were you consciously, I guess, like channeling source or calling in source into your artwork? Like at what point did, I guess, your creative practice become sacred?
That's such an interesting question. I feel like I'm someone who kind of believes that everything is sacred, and even when we don't realize it is, that it is. So I would say, from the moment that I started making art, it was a sacred practice, and I feel that for everyone, anyone who is creating anything, it is a sacred practice, whether you realize that or not. But the moment that started to become more conscious was, I think, in that time where I wasn't sleeping and where I was having a lot of insomnia and I was painting, because it was in those really like late 3 a.m. hours where you're kind of in between worlds anyways, that I started to just, say, I'm open, like whatever wants to move through me right now, please move through me. I don't care what this looks like. Just let it move. And I think that that's another really important thing in any kind of art practice, is just having space where you're like, I don't care what this looks like, but let it move through me.
Hearing you talk, I'm hearing the words, okay, trust. Like she had to fully embody trust. Like, what are some of the qualities that you feel on your art journey that that this journey has really helped you embody?
Trust is certainly one of them. I think that that's probably one of the biggest ones. The ability to let creativity move through you is the ability to let the unknown move through you, because when you're creating from that space of like not trying to make something look exactly like something else, but creating from a place of, I don't know what's going to happen when I put my brush on this canvas, but I'm just going to let it move. You have to let go, and you have to trust, and you have to kind of turn off the part of your brain that says, what am I doing? This doesn't look like anything. This looks ugly. The judgment is going to come up, and I feel like when you continue to practice, eventually the judgment gets a little bit quieter. So trust is definitely a big one. Confidence, I would say, is another one. Just the realization that the more that you do something, the better you get at it. And so having been making art for so long and painting for so long, to look back and see like how much my skill has grown just from doing it is a big confidence booster, and gives me the confidence to know that no matter what it is that I want to do in life, I can accomplish it, as long as I practice. And I think that a lot of people think that creativity is something that you're born with, and you either have it or you don't. Like, you have talent as an artist or you don't, and that's so not true. Like, you can do anything that you set your mind to. You just have to practice it, and creativity is the same way. It's a muscle that you have to learn how to flex.
I really think that creative expression is our birthright.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was something that you said there that had me... with the trust and the confidence, it makes me think of all the times that I've bought big canvases, and I was so overwhelmed that I was like, nope. And now all the canvases that I have right now are little ones. But now hearing what you're saying and kind of realizing that I'm in this place in my life where the jumps I want to make are more big and unknown than ever, it kind of makes me want to think of like the therapy of getting a big ass canvas and being like, you can do this. Don't think too much, just do.
Mm-hmm.
You recently did a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
right? How many days of art was it?
365.
Can you touch on that for everyone?
Sure, yeah. Despite having made a lot of art, and despite having even like made an immersive art show that sold out, I still was questioning, like, is art the thing that I want to do long term? And I think a lot of that questioning just comes from conditioning and from, beliefs of the starving artist. And this isn't like a real career. You can't really make a good living off of this. And kind of just buying into other people's stories that it's a waste of time, basically. And so I was questioning whether art was something that I wanted to do and whether or not I was good enough to do it. And I saw a video that someone created where they made a mini painting every single day for a year. And watching that, it brought me to tears, and I just realized how badly I wanted that. Like, how badly I wanted to be making art every day, and why was I stopping myself? And I knew that the only way that I was going to confront that question of why am I stopping myself was if I forced myself to do it every single day. And so I decided in that moment I'm going to make art every single day for an entire year. And I didn't put limits on what kind of art I was going to make because I wanted to allow myself the freedom to explore and find what it is that I really resonated with, because I was making so many different kinds of art. And so, yeah, I set out on that journey. I told myself at least 15 minutes every single day, you're going to sit down and make something, because I knew that, 15 minutes was doable no matter what I had going on. In a day, I could set aside 15 minutes. And I did it. I think I missed like 10 days, but I ended up like tacking those onto the end to make it like a full 365 days. And it was just such an experience. I learned a lot about myself, and my skill in art definitely increased a lot through that practice. I think the hardest part of it, though, was just, like I said, that question of why am I stopping myself? And on the days that I was really unmotivated and that I really just didn't want to do it, it was like, why? And you're going to do it anyways, so.
Did you ever get answers as to why? Because I think there are so many people out there who have creative insecurity. I think it would be powerful for them to hear when you had those hard days. What were those reasons why, and how did you find the courage to do it anyways?
Oh, the hardest part was having to meet myself. And I'll say that again because the truck drove by. So the hardest part of the challenge was just having to meet myself at the canvas or the paper or whatever it was. Because creativity is such an intimate practice with yourself, and it is something where you really have to get in touch with yourself. And if you're doing that every single day, you're gonna start to see the parts of yourself that you don't like. You're gonna start to feel those places where you feel insecure, like you said, creative insecurity. And, that's what I realized was stopping me, was just the having to confront myself, the having to start the process and have the mind going through you're not good enough, this is ugly, like you're never going to make anything of this. And I just didn't want to hear that so badly that I wouldn't create. And forcing myself to create really just made me confront that voice in myself and say, even if there's a part of me that believes that, it's okay. Like, I hear you, your opinion is valid, I get where it's coming from, but also I'm going to do it anyways. And that transformed the relationship. My relationship with creativity really started to become a lot more fun and a lot more two-sided, where I felt I was giving and then creativity was giving back to me, because I had kind of allowed that voice of judgment to just be heard, and then just be like, well, you can exist, and it still exists to this day. but it's a lot quieter now. And it doesn't have power over my work anymore. And I was the one who was giving it that power by letting it stop me from creating in the first place.
I'm reading this book, and it's about Chinese medicine and emotions and psychology, and something in almost every chapter I feel like I'm reading is how the antithesis of life is repression. And it's just right there, you saying, yeah, that voice sucked to hear, but I didn't repress it. And then eventually it subsided, and you got to move on. You got to move forward in life rather than, I really am starting to see repression as, especially repression of emotions, as time traveling. You're not present. You're not going forward. You're stuck in the past. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like this year of creation, especially those days where you were in the suck, you were propelling yourself forward. And yeah, it was subtle, but in such a strong and powerful way.
Yeah, and I made a lot of bad art. Like, I made a lot of pieces that just, sucked, and I had a lot of days in my sketchbook where it just didn't look good, and it did look bad. If I were going to look at it and judge it, I would say, those proportions were way off, that face doesn't look like a face. And I think it's important that no matter how long you've been practicing art, that you allow yourself to have that you allow yourself to not be good, because that's really what's going to propel you forward, not just in art, but in all of life. So much of what stops people from trying something new is the fear that they're going to be bad at it. Mm-hmm. And you are going to be bad at it. But you have to do it anyways, especially if it's something that you really want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I realized I said the antithesis of life, the antithesis of living. Mm-hmm. Sorry, because the antithesis of life is death. The antithesis of living is repression. But what you were saying, it reminds me, I have a friend who's a florist, and she tells me, if you're a plant person, you've probably killed more plants than actually kept them alive.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm sure you can relate to that, especially with your side business. Well, it's not yours, but I mean, the side business that you are absolutely a huge part of. Yeah. So something that seems to have amalgamated out of your year of art was this series, the archetype series that you've been working on. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. There is another podcast out there called the Creative Pep Talk Podcast, and it's hosted by Andy J. Pizza. If you're a creative, it's a really wonderful space to tune into. And he did a podcast, and he talked about creating something called an identity parade, or it's just like creating a body of work where you explore all these different identities within yourself, and how empowering that can be to just see yourself in a different light and allow yourself to take on these many different perspectives. And so that kind of was the initial spark of the Feminine Archetype series that I'm working on now. And I really just wanted this project to be a space where I could explore all of the many facets of being a woman and allow myself to embody all these different personalities. And I think we so often restrict ourselves to who we think we are, who we're supposed to be. And there are so many ways of being. And through each piece that I've created and that I am creating, I go through a process of embodying who it is that I'm putting on the canvas. And so, for instance, the first one that I created was the maiden. She's the youthful, kind of naive one. And I feel like she is who I embodied through most of my life, like really sweet and gentle, but kind of naive and not really strong in her power. And so I went through the process of really embodying that childlike energy, and then I moved on to the next one, which was quite different. I went into the warrior, which was an initiation into power. It forced me to ask the question, what am I passionate about and what do I really care about, and realizing it's the earth. And so I wanted to create a piece that really showed how much I cared for the earth and how passionate I was about being a warrior for the earth. And from there, I moved into the lover, which is just kind of embodying more of our sensuality, our sexuality, and allowing myself to be seen in that light, which was a little bit difficult. I think that I had shut that part of myself off for a little while after some really difficult experiences, and realized that I missed her. Like, I missed that energy of the free-flowing lovers, sensuality, just kind of really getting grounded and feeling into the pleasures of being here on Earth. And then the latest one that I did was the mother. And so kind of moving into that energy of a life giver. And that's a really powerful one because it is so tied into creativity, giving life to, whether it's literal babies or giving life to paintings, giving life to something that you're creating with your hands, with your voice, with your body. We get to tap into that mother energy, and it's such a powerful and spiritual space. And it's going through the process of creating these paintings that really allows me to go deep into what it means to embody that archetype within myself, and that's going to be different for everyone. So, that's where I'm at in the series now. I have 3 more archetypes left to do, and then I'll probably tie it all together with like a bigger picture of wholeness of my own femininity. So it's really a personal exploration that I'm going on, and that's what I love about art, is that it allows us to go there.
What are the other, if you don't mind sharing, the last 3 archetypes? I'm curious.
So the next one will be the queen, and then the mystic, and then the last one is the crone, so the wise old woman, which I'm very excited about painting that one. I know it's going to be a challenge, but yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I am, as you're saying all of this, I'm visualizing all the photos or the paintings that you have done, and all the little details and little nuances, and realizing how, that how much it means. I think of the maiden with the flower, how you say it's light but a little bit naive, easily carried in the wind, but also it's focus on how we show up in the world, how everyone else sees us. And then I think of your warrior painting where there's thick tree trunks and roots, and it's more that rooted, who am I, not what does the world think of me, but what do I think of myself. And oh my gosh, it's so good. I want to do this. I feel really inspired to do it. I think of growing up, Frida Kahlo was in high school, she was the one who helped me accept myself fully, because she painted herself emphasizing her mustache and her unibrow and her pain. And all of a sudden, all these things about me that absolutely are about being a woman that I was ashamed of growing up, all of a sudden I was like, wow, this actually can be displayed and celebrated and magnified.
And that's the power of art, is that it is alchemy. It's like taking this painful thing that life has given you, or this ugly thing that life has given you, and saying, I'm going to make something out of this. Like, I'm going to turn this into something beautiful. And it really gives you the power back. It puts the power back in your hands when you can do that.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the mushrooms or what, but I'm so excited right now. I actually have this one tattoo on me, the leopard, that it came through during a time where I was being taken advantage of. I was working a lot of jobs, and all of my bosses in some way were disrespecting me. And I kind of realized, I had looked back at an old entry in my journal where I said I would much rather betray myself than to allow anyone around me to feel uncomfortable. And when I read that, I was heartbroken. I was angry. Gosh. I felt betrayed by everyone and myself, but also realized everyone was treating me this way because I allowed it. I almost expected it.
Yeah.
And so out from that anger and frustration came all these drawings of these leopards. And then one day I go, I'm going to get this leopard on my body. This is my totem of this, how it's possible to be unfuckwithable and to also be like my soft, gentle self. Yeah, art is just so incredible, and how it gives us this opportunity to reflect. One thing that keeps on coming up for me since we started this conversation is, as I said earlier, it really gives you the opportunity to look back and see tangibly where have you been and where are you going with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is there anything, I know you're working on this archetype series, or is there anything else creatively that's been bubbling up for you lately that you are wanting to birth?
I mean, there's always so much creativity within me. Like, I have such a long list of ideas. So right now, I'm just focused on the archetype series, but I'm really, really excited for what's going to come after that. And I don't know what it is, but I'm excited to figure it out. But just trying to be present with where I'm at right now and not get too caught up in the next thing, because I still have a little ways to go here.
Yeah. I mean, these paintings are no joke.
Yeah.
They require a lot of detail. On that note, I have a few closing questions that I ask all my guests, and I really didn't prep you, I'm sorry. But my first question is because food therapy is such a huge piece to my healing journey, and I love to hear about how food has healed others. So I'd love for you to share a food that has been healing for you on your journey.
One food specifically, or like an herb? Doesn't matter.
Whatever you feel called.
Okay, well, the first thing that comes to mind, and we were talking about this earlier, is red raspberry leaf. Such a powerful healer for the women out there, and I think, my work is really focused on women as well. So if you are a woman at all and you struggle with any sort of like hormone imbalance, definitely red raspberry leaf is a huge help. It's changed my life for sure.
And then my last question, and you can answer this to whatever depth you're comfortable with, but what is a darkness that you have either recently found yourself on the other side of or are currently moving through that you feel called to share?
I'll just kind of skim the surface of this one because it's not something that I feel super comfortable sharing publicly right now. I think just the overall darkness of being a woman, the power that we have in our wombs, and just the power that we possess as human beings in general, the power that we have to manipulate others, I think is like a darkness that I've witnessed within myself and have really had to come to terms with, that I do have power. I do have the power to influence others. I have the power to make their day really bad, or I have the power to make their day really good. And that is so hard to accept and to admit. And so, yeah, I would say that that's the quote-unquote darkness that I'm navigating right now, is how powerful I am.
That's amazing. That's an awesome answer. It makes me think of the painting, The Lover, that you were talking about, how you missed her. And I know that in my life, sensuality, sexuality was, from my lens, a ticket to being unsafe. I would see other people I cared about being taken advantage of, or just giving themselves away and feeling empty on the other side of it. And so I grew up, I was a tomboy, and then eventually I was like, all right, I'm a girl. I want to stay a girl. But what does it mean to be a woman and to have femininity? And it was always this version that had my sexuality repressed because I felt really deeply unsafe. And I think for me, in my acceptance of myself as a woman, it's come with this necessity of accepting that I am safe. And with that, there is power. It's still a little bit complicated for me, though.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think so many women go through that experience of healing, needing to heal their relationship with their sexuality and with their sensuality, because we are sent a lot of mixed messages about it. But it really is where our power comes from, and it really is where our creativity comes from as well. So if you want to go deeper into your creativity, you also got to go deeper into your sensuality.
Wow. I have really put my art practice on the back burner with this semester with school, but after talking to you, I know that it needs to come to the surface no matter what else is going on in my life. It's like a necessity.
Yeah, creativity really is a necessity, and unfortunately, it is something that most people put on the back burner. It's not something that we think of as important because it doesn't typically make us money, but it is your connection with your life force, your ability to create. And so, if I could leave everyone with anything, it would be to know that your creativity is your power. And if you want to feel more empowered and be a more empowered human, just start to create, and you're going to find it if you keep creating.
Mic drop. I was going to ask, is there any last thing that you want to share? But that seems to have put that bow on the package that is this podcast. Summer, how can people find you, and what are your offerings, if you have any right now?
Sure. So you can find me, primarily I'm hanging out on YouTube right now, and my handle there is at Summer Thyme. Summer like the season, thyme like the herb. And then on Instagram, I'm at some.thyme, thyme like the herb. So you can find me in both of those places. Also, definitely check out my website, send me a message. I'd love to connect. And then, what was your other question? Offerings? Okay, so I have a couple offerings right now. I think in terms of this podcast and the listeners here, probably the thing that you guys would be most interested in would be creative mentorship. And that is 6 sessions worth, 3 months, where I go into a deep container with you, and I'm just your guide to reconnect with that creativity and to reconnect with that power, because it does get sticky and there can be a lot that comes up once you start to create. And so it can be helpful to have a guide in that. What my purpose is there. So I help you connect with your creativity. I'll also teach you some art skills along the way and help navigate all those sticky moments that come up. So.
And is it for those who specifically want to paint, or is it for other mediums as well?
Visual arts is primarily where we'll be working. I've done a little bit of other art, and I do like to incorporate some dance, and I'm happy to blend a little bit of mixed media, but definitely visual art would be the primary focus. Yeah.
Awesome. And all of that with Summer's YouTube, as well as Instagram and her website, will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for this conversation. I know that the listener has gained a lot, but you know what? I think what matters most is I gained a lot. I definitely feel changed from this conversation, and I hope all of you are feeling something in that as well. So thank you, Summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, and I'm so honored that I could give you a little gift here.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the show. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share with a friend and leave a 5-star review. Your reminder, if you would like to participate in the podcast about spiritual bypassing, you can send me a message via Instagram, or you can send me an email, which you'll find on my website, linked in the show notes, or you can scroll through the show notes until you find the option to do the audio recording. Thank you in advance, and I will be feeling your energy next week.